Hey, welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts 3 weeks in a row.
Wah wah! Da 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 da. Supervision, supervision, supervision.
Who's here?
Timber! Supervision!
It's Jackie.
And Diana.
You guys have screwed up your voices now. Hey, yes. So this is ABA Inside Track, the podcast that talks about behavior analysis and the behavior analytic research that is developed to learn more about our fabulous field. And since it is September, as our song hinted at, it is Supervision September, which is, like we did last year, 3 straight episodes in a row on the topic of supervision. Whew.
We're getting tired.
I know.
Home stretch.
It's the home stretch. Yeah, some people, Diana was saying, someone was emailing and said, hey, you guys should do your show. Oh, no, it wasn't an email. It was a personal thought you had. Sometimes I think we should do this show every week. And then even you were tired. And I said, try to edit this show to get it out 1 week at a time.
Yeah.
You need to be about a month ahead because, it's tough stuff. It's tough stuff.
We would all have to quit our jobs and just go backpacking in Europe and do soul searching and make a podcast.
I like that.
That would be a different podcast. That'd probably be easier to edit.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
probably
man.
true.
Yeah, but anyway, our podcast is not about something that's
What
always
is
easy
life?
to edit. It's a podcast that can be hard to edit because I want to make sure all the choice nuggets about supervision just come through as clear as day. So this is our last episode on the topic of supervision, and we will be talking in depth about behavioral skills training.
So I don't love that it's called behavioral skills training. I know it is, but I wish it was just called behavior skills training. Sometimes I just...
Or is it behavior skills? I've
No,
seen it.
no.
I feel like I've seen it. Sometimes it's behavior skills training,
'Cause
although it could have been because I wrote it wrong. And
No,
that's what I was looking
it
at.
really is behavioral skills training. You're right. That's where it originated from. But I think some people have knocked off the AL because you don't really need
I
it.
usually just say behavior skills.
Me too.
But it is technically
Behavioral.
behavioral.
Behavioral skills training. And what that is, if you don't know, and you'll know more about it, is the technique of effective training of other individuals by using the same set of steps, which includes description, modeling, role play, and feedback to full competency. We're going to go into much more detail than that. For those of you who listened to last year's Supervision September, when we did our Supervision Book Club with the Supervisor's Guidebook, we did talk quite a bit about behavioral skills training, though it was a little bit more narrow in concept. This is an entire episode in which all we will be talking about is behavioral skills training, how to do it, some examples of it, and then how to expand your basic knowledge of behavioral skills training. So for those of you who say, I already know about this, I can train one person. Okay, well, guess what? We're going to teach you to train more than one person.
In a group, in a group, in a group, in a group.
That's right. It's really about training the trainer to do behavioral skills training. It's a lot of training,
unless
guys.
you're like a
so much
boutique,
training is going to happen.
You're a boutique consultant and you only have 2 employees and somehow you're charging thousands of dollars per hour and you just have all the time in the world to devote to just the fanciest of Dijon trainings for your employees.
Like you work at Minnie Mouse's boutique. I really want to work there.
I don't think she uses behavioral skills training. It seems to me from watching
It's
that
like
show
just
this
her
morning.
and Daisy and Clarabelle Cow.
There's that weird bird.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they just have shenanigans and zaniness ensues.
I don't know what you're talking
That's
about.
why you shouldn't go into business with your friends. Because who's going to do the training?
Uh-oh.
Jackie, we did not actually rehearse this, but I had a trivia question that I was like, how will I fit this trivia question into the podcast?
Yes.
But
What is
Diana
it?
just did it. We did not practice this.
Okay.
This is not like a married thing. This
Okay.
is it just naturally has happened.
Okay.
What were Mickey Mouse's first spoken words in a cartoon?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
Was it in Steamboat Willie?
It was not in Steamboat Willie.
Was
so
that-
that is good knowledge of Steamboat Willie.
Yes,
High
right?
five.
It was... Ooh, wowzers!
No.
I love Minnie!
It was not.
Oh,
No.
what was it?
That's
It
pretty
was hot dogs, hot dogs.
Oh, I
But-
can see that.
But it was not voiced by Walt Disney, so it was very terrifying. He just goes, hot dogs, hot dogs. I'm like, what the? That's not your voice at all, Mickey Mouse.
I did not know this.
His first line in Steamboat Willie was probably,
Yeah, I think it was.
Is that why they do the hot dog song now?
Yeah, it is thought that may be an homage to the original 1929 The Carnival Kid, in which Mickey Mouse uttered his now famous first 2 lines, hot dogs, which all the kids are saying.
But do you know what, guys?
What?
This is not a podcast about Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse.
No. We did this all
Or hot dogs.
No, we did it all out of order, because hopefully everyone figured out we're a behavior analytic podcast and we're talking about supervision.
Right.
But
We said that.
You
We
somehow
did.
zoned out for like
But then we talked
7
about
minutes.
some more about hot dogs.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was just, I was hoping to find
Hot
a time
dog.
to enter it in, and that just seemed like the best time. I wanted to get it out of the way.
I
Hot
like that.
dog.
Anyway, why don't we get
let's do
into
it.
the topic of behavioral skills training even more so? I'm just going to be thinking about old Disney cartoons. Oh yeah, what articles are we reading? Thank you for handing those over, Diana. We have 2 articles that we'll be reviewing. The first is Evidence-Based Staff Training, a Guide for Practitioners by Parsons, Rollyson, and Reid from Behavior Analysis in Practice 2012. And then Teaching Practitioners to Conduct Behavioral Skills Training, a pyramidal approach for training multiple human service staff by Parsons, Rollyson, and Reid. Also from Behavior Analysis in Practice, but from a different year, 2013, when they went to blue titles for some reason that year. If you're looking at the
like
paper.
that. Yeah, they're like, let's try this out.
And then they went back to red.
They're like,
or
no thanks.
umber, whatever color
It was
it
the 1 year.
Yeah.
It was blue.
No, thank you.
It was the saddest year
Yeah.
in the journal.
It was
All
the
right.
blue period.
It's the blue period. I'm going to start.
Yeah, let's do
Go
it.
over,
So you
Daggy.
know.
Describe to me this behavioral skills training that we've spoken so much about.
So I'm going to, but you know what? I'm going to leave you on a hook for a minute, throw my line in, and talk to you a little bit about why behavior analysis might love behavioral skills training and why other fields may not
Mm-hmm.
use it. They might love it once they had it, but they don't have it.
Right.
So we've all worked at jobs, right?
Yes.
I worked at Burger
I have.
King. I was a lifeguard. These are all things that I did. I worked at a coffee shop. I was a waitress before I became a behavior analyst.
I worked at a rock shop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I knew that
Like
about you.
Earth.
Yeah.
Earth rocks.
Not rock and roll.
What about
Precious
you, Rob?
metals.
Where'd you work?
I worked at a Stop and Shop, which is a grocery store, and I worked at a Funko Land, which is a video game store, and I worked at an office.
Okay. So when we started all of these jobs, right, we all had like on-the-job training, I'm assuming. Well, right, theoretically, right, we're supposed to have on-the-job training. And usually that training is didactic in nature, meaning, you know, our supervisor comes in, they sit us down, we're in a room, we may or may not have coffee and donuts. Preferably we do. They just tell us what we need to do, we write it down, and then we leave, right? So that's a didactic in nature training.
Did you get a video training at Burger King in which they taught you how to keep the hot drinks hot and the cold
Yeah,
drinks cold?
I did,
There's a
actually.
rap song, maybe?
Mm-hmm. The only one I really remember, because I did that for a while, was when I was food and crew safety manager in 1999. I got to watch a video for that.
Was it on a VHS?
Hell yeah, it was. Usually, with all jobs, training is part of our job responsibility. Engaging in this didactic supervision or this didactic training, we're not necessarily expected to do anything, right? So we watch this and then we're expected to go onto the job and teach and do whatever we're doing, sell burgers, keep hot drinks hot, keep cold drinks cold. But we've not really practiced it, so it's going to be it's going to be more difficult to us.
It's like the South Park analogy of, what is it, Rob? Sell underpants.
Oh.
Take a
Part 1, get
Yeah.
underpants. Part 2, question mark. Part 3, profits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of is what happens,
Yeah.
right?
Watch a video. Step 1. Step 2, question mark. Step
Step
3,
three,
be
do
competent at your job.
Right. I love that. Good work. Bring it around, because I was a little confused in where you're going there, but I'm like, you probably know what you're talking about. And then you did. So that's good. Yeah, often many people do not acquire the skills that they need to be skillful at their job just because of that didactic instruction. So it actually saves a lot of time to do something different. And especially, you know, now in my current job as a behavior analyst and all, you know, your jobs as behavior analysts, we're expected to teach effective practices to both staff and caregivers. So that's a pretty hefty duty thing that we have to do. And if we're just learning through didactic instruction, it may be really challenging for us. So the focus of a training model such as behavioral skills training is to train performance skills and competency-based skills. So what I mean there is that performance deals with what people do, so what the trainer does, what the trainee does, and the competency-based part repeats each skill until mastery is reached. So this is where the data comes in. And it really doesn't focus on training verbal skills. So a lot of the time, people will say, okay, as long as you can define something and talk about it, you've got it. But we all know that that doesn't necessarily translate. So I can say that I know what I'm doing, but it doesn't necessarily translate or generalize to me actually knowing what I'm doing.
And years of research on the acquisition of new skills demonstrates that if you train someone by telling them what to do or having them watch a video about what to do, they tend to never reach a mastery criterion without a lot of additional training. And since usually in many of these settings, the training is watch this video or I will tell you what to do, and then you will not get any feedback about your performance until I'm firing you for not doing it correctly, you probably never get to any sense of mastery, or you sort of just screw it up enough times but not enough to get fired that you sort of eventually get the right behavior shaped, possibly by being yelled at repeatedly, which is just everyone's favorite way to learn new skills.
And my favorite articles on the side, if you're thinking about behavioral skills training not in relation to supervising staff, are the safety skills that Ray Miltenberger has produced over the years on gun safety and safety abduction or prevention. Safety abduction. How to safely abduct someone. Prevent abduction. You see that, just watching Freddie the Eagle in a classroom isn't going to diminish kids from taking the guns out and playing with them when they're real. So this is kind of along the same lines. So Parsons, Rollyson, and Reid have described what to do when training in a group. And they say, this is commonly referred to as behavioral skills training, but we're going to break it down even farther. And so they had 6 steps. Break it down. So they were very specific. Kind of crazy how specific they were. So the first step was that they want to describe the target skill to your audience. So they say that this sometimes comes along in behavioral skills training as the instruction, but sometimes people don't put it in, and they think this is really important because if staff are not bought into what they're doing, they're probably not going to do it, right? So here, when they are describing the skill, this is where you're going to provide the rationale for why the skill is going to be taught, and you're going to use very specific behavioral definitions. They said that it might be really cool for you to create a checklist so everyone knows out each specific step that you're going to do and why you're going to do each specific step.
Checklists are so cool.
Yeah, they are.
Yes.
And
they're cool.
Spoiler alert, guys, we can use the checklist in the future.
Yes.
It's for multiple steps.
That's how we're going to give our feedback later.
I do think that...
They didn't really talk about that even in the article.
Yeah, they did.
I knew we were going to forget it if we didn't talk about it now.
Yeah.
I do think the part about adding in the rationale for why you're teaching a particular skill is important.
I do
Because
too.
I said so.
Yeah, that's
Because
not a great
you want to
rationale.
keep your job. Am I getting warmer?
I don't think so. I think that it lowers morale.
Yeah, especially when there's like a really hard skill and you're like, why are we doing this? I'm like getting punched in the face every day. Like a kid's biting me. I just want to stop and do nothing. If someone's like, here's a rationale, it's going to get worse, but then it's going to get better. And and it's going to be much quicker and you're going to be really happy in your job again. Then I might be more likely to engage in those skills.
Or annoying red tape type skills when you're like, this is a requirement for this agency. You're like, okay, fine.
Right.
Now I know why we have to do it.
Right. So it's just not, I'm just doing it for fun. Haha, more paperwork for you.
Right.
And so the second step is to provide a succinct written description. And they pull out an amazing point that I never really thought of, is that you should not just give someone the behavior plan.
Oh, yeah. I've stopped giving people full. I mean, I'll have it. I'll be like, I've shared a copy with you. I'll do one of two things. One, I'll have like the cheat sheet version. Like, this is actually the one I look at for my observation. So it's actually the one I want you to look at.
Yeah.
Or if it's someone who I know is, say, I'm supervising towards their BCBA, or it's maybe a classroom teacher who I expect to be able to answer a lot of questions about it, I'll say the exercise is going to be take this longer thing, and I want you to make my checklist for me.
That's
because
great.
then I'll know you understand what's in this behavior guideline.
Rob, that is amazing.
Because guess who wants to read the behavior guidelines?
No one.
No one.
Right. But I think that this is something that I did not do this. But now I'm going to do this in the future. So they suggest that bringing up that checklist again. Here, instead of doing a very formal behavior assessment, which is useful, they said in other places, but in a training capacity, nobody has time to read that on the floor. So you can use that checklist not only for a succinct description and rationale, but also as your like instructions that they can take home. So I love that. So I think that's a really good point for behavior analysts to think about, because we always are like, here's the behavior plan, see ya.
Yep.
Right? And it's a little more work for us, right? But if that little more work is going to pay off in the long run, which research now shows that it might, most of the time, that we should probably engage in those types of responses.
And realistically, if you're giving someone a behavior plan, it is most likely they didn't just say, just write a behavior plan for me, and then go away. They would probably like you to train them on the use of the behavior plan, in which case you're going to want to use behavioral skills training, in which case you're going to want to have a nice succinct list that you can use both for your feedback later on and then for your, here's my written list of what to do at the beginning.
So that was a golden nugget. No, I know a lot about behavioral skills training. I've done it a lot, but that is something that I have not done. So know that even if you've read a ton on behavioral skills training, every article is going to give you a little bit more depth and girth into the subject. I just like that word and never get to use it. All right, so the third step is to demonstrate the target skill. This is commonly referred to as modeling in behavioral skills training. The authors here suggest that this role play should be scripted and rehearsed, so it's very fluent on exactly what you want to teach. I think sometimes we might forget that as well. I don't know. How about you, Rob, when you are...
I think this is definitely a component where... later on, I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but when they're talking about future directions, the idea of could video modeling be used?
Right.
This is where there's probably a benefit for the video modeling, because then you don't have to worry as much about, am I showing the exact same responses every time, or is this a matter of I've done something different each time? Which, there's something to be said for multiple exemplars, but it's also one of, did I do the model I wanted to do? Because if you run the same training over and over, you invariably have that moment where you're like, oh, my example was terrible and it was too confusing, or it was too simple, or it threw too many target behaviors together.
Right.
And, then you're like, I better fix that. And then you never do, because you don't remember it's a problem until the next time you're doing the training and you realize, oh yeah, I didn't bother to write that down. I really should. So if you do the model ahead of time and you either script it or film it, problem is solved.
Yeah, and they do say in this section too that video models have been shown to be successful at showing what you want, and they even recommend or go as so far as to say that you should stop or freeze in quotations in the moment, like in the role play, and point out the important parts of the role play and what people should be doing, and explain what's going on, which I love. You're like, all right, now freeze.
Yeah. You may be wondering how I got here.
This is like a real Wonder Years type of training.
Yeah, but I like that, though. I'm thinking, it might be a little weirder when you're in an actual role play, right? But it won't be weird if you've rehearsed and scripted in the freeze, right? And then you have, like, what you're going to say.
Yeah.
But in the video model, I know that when I'm showing a video of something I want people to do, I'll stop and say, look, the girl's hands are very close to the faucet.
Right.
And there's water dripping on them, like when I'm talking about hand washing. So I could see that being useful, like highlighting the salient cues.
If you watch the preference assessment video that I made years ago. You do
that.
I did. I zoomed into my hands. I don't think I slow mode because I didn't have the technology back then, or I didn't have the software. But I run it, and then I zoom in on my hands and sort of show some of it slowly, which no special effects. I just moved my hands kind of slowly, so it looked a little easier. But I usually do that if I'm acting it out, if I don't have the video or I haven't had time to prep a video because I'm just doing sort of a somewhat on the fly training.
Right.
I'll usually go, let's go through it. So here I am doing this, and then I'll do it. Here I am doing this. Let's see it once at full speed, and then I'll repeat it afterwards.
I like that. That's what you do a lot in exercise classes, right? They're like, let's dance, and you're going to put one leg up, one leg
That's
up. Now
true.
let's go faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they just said, let's go faster, I'm out of there in 1 second because I can't follow.
Here's the new move. Watch me. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, you only can do that if you're in like a full dance person.
Yeah.
But I'm not. But yeah.
You have to have all the gear on in order to be able to do that.
Yeah, like
the leotard,
shirt,
the leg warmers, the
everything.
headband, the sweatbands.
Yeah, so I like that. I like the golden nugget here in this step for me was that you need to rehearse and script. So many times I think people come into trainings knowing what they want to train, but I've got this. and then they actually haven't like outlined exactly what they want to do, and that may have actually wasted a bunch of time, because then they might, have sidelined going somewhere that happens a bunch, or they're like, what is a good example, right? But if they have it and they know exactly what they want to do, I think that's really important.
Yeah, when I was reading this article, the second half, and they're like, here's some examples, I almost skipped it because it's like, I know behavioral skills training, it's
too.
Fine. But then when I was like, no, I gotta read it. The only new and exciting thing was just the examples of it. This is how scripted it is. So the first time, you have to prompt like this. The second time, your confederate should only do, because it was most to least prompting, so you needed a second person. You should only move on the first response, but not the second response. So they got very specific as to what it would look like. So it was a nice illustrative example.
And we'll get there.
Illustrative.
It's an illustrious example.
Okay, so now we're on step 4, which is we're requiring the trainee to practice the target skill. And they highlighted, and I feel like if they could have like bolded it and underlined it and put lots of exclamation points around it, that they suggested that every single trainee has to rehearse the skill.
Yeah.
So you can't just have one person do it. Oh, that one person was the trainee, the other person was the teacher, we're good. Everyone has to perform the skill in front of the trainer. So that may be a little challenging sometimes, and we'll discuss that more, I think, in dissemination station. But they say in order for this to be successful, you have to rehearse the skill. Everyone has to rehearse the skill, and everyone has to complete this in front of a trainer. And they say that research suggests this is shown to be one of the most important parts of behavioral skills training is this rehearsal.
And they did, for some of the group trainings, when they had a skill that required a confederate, they did do the sort of, all right, everyone, you're in a group, work on this, and I'll be coming around and giving feedback. And I know just from experience, my personal experience, if you're new to that, if you are going to tell people, I need you to do something until I come around, really emphasize the fact that I need you to keep doing this until I have observed you. And that might be a long time, and it might feel silly, but you have to keep going, because we've all been in that class where they say, okay, everyone get in a group and you do it once. You're like, great, did it. I'm good. And then you stand around or you chat. And then when the trainer comes over, could you please do the skill? And you're like, oh, we're good. And then you have to get them to do it. And it really is a pain. And if you're a trainee, it's really disrespectful. So try to just keep at it as long as you can.
Which is why it would be good as the trainer to provide like several exemplars of what to do. So like do one perfectly, then do one where you make this type of error of omission and one with an error of commission, right? And practice the error correction procedure so that they have multiple things to do while they wait.
Yeah. Even when I tell trainees, keep going until I come around, you still get like 50% of people who are like, they do it once and they're like, yep, I think we're good. I got it. I know how to do this. It's fine. And
you feel so silly.
Yeah, you do.
Doing those role plays. But they're actually important.
They're so helpful. Yeah. The research shows that they're one of the most important parts. Followed up by, you can't just do role plays, but you also have to have step 5, which is performance feedback. So the trainer has to provide performance feedback during practice and circulate while everyone engages in the skill. And this is when they suggest that if you have more than 4 people, you should have more than 2 trainers present, which makes a lot of sense. And spoiler, Diana's going to talk about how this could happen in her next article that we review. And then the final step...
That was a teaser.
Oh, teaser. Sorry. You know my words. And the final step is just repeat until mastery.
Or you were too exhausted to continue.
Right? Yeah, so you're going to be continuing, your trainees are going to continually role play and be provided feedback until they reach that criterion. And they usually suggest 100% successful or potentially lower if you don't have to do something. But they're like, why would you train it if you don't have to do it? So they said that it should not be lower than 100 most of the time. Now, what do you guys think about that?
Well, when I have a new skill that I'm teaching, let's say discrete trial training, because that's, anyone working in the field of applied behavior analysis is probably going to end up doing discrete trial training at some point. When I'm running discrete trial trainings, I will usually I'll have like a multiple bar checklist. So I can have, 5 opportunities, and I'll usually do like a 4 out of 5, because When I provide the feedback, if they're making mistakes and I have to give the corrective feedback, I typically tell my trainees, I'm going to focus on corrective feedback because I know you want to do it right. And my goal is to help you get it right as fast as possible. Because if I spend a lot of time watching them sort of flail about and do 5 trials, okay, now let's while the student's taking a break, let's talk about all the things you did wrong. I'd rather just remember to do this, remember to do that. And so I kind of give them one try to go through. I mark what they did wrong. I give them the feedback as we go. And then after I've given them the feedback, I have them do it again until I see them do it right. And then I either schedule another observation, because I usually try to do this in like one classroom. I've usually got 2 or 3 new people. And then I'll come back again another day and I'll kind of give them another shot. Or I'm going to give you feedback until you get it right. Then I'm going to do my 5 checks. Or I go in between, and I've never really found one that I love. Like this is the best way to make sure that they're going to master the skill, because you should never leave anyone you're observing until they have performed it at least once, 100% correctly, even if it's after feedback. If that's the case, I'd say make sure to make a note. Come back and see that person tomorrow and do this again. But if I give them feedback on 1 or 2 parts, and then they do it correctly, and then they do it correctly 4 more times out of the total 5, I'll usually say that 400%. Out of an 80% total number of sessions, I think they got it. I'll come back next week and observe them. Because again, it's not in this article, but we talked about last year in our supervision series, training someone to do a new skill is important, but there's a good chance if you are continuing to supervise them, you will see them do that skill again in the near future. That's important to do so.
It actually is in this article. Next.
Is that part in there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The next thing is that you need to provide on-the-job training. Yeah.
Oh, but the ongoing piece, though.
But that's ongoing.
No, but like a regularly occurring.
Yes, right. So you need to go...
Just set it and forget it.
Set it and forget it. You have to go into now the natural environment to make sure that participant can engage in those specific skills to criteria under different competing contingencies, right? So we all know that the real world is very different than our role play world, right? Yeah. So kids are always... not like the trainee or the trainer, right? And there may be competing contingencies with other people in the room. You might be hungry, you might be tired, the kid might be engaging in problem behavior or not engaging in any behavior that we can see, right? Like the stare blankly face. And so it's how are you going to do whatever you need to be doing in these specific environments? And then just like Rob said, which I love, is to set a criteria, make sure that you're really specific, and then just keep following up until they can engage in it in both the role play situation and in the natural environment. And then follow up. Continue following up to make sure that they're still engaging in those types of responses that you want to see, because contingencies can change.
Yeah. And that technically is the job of the supervisor. And for some of you, you may be called in like, hey, behavior analyst, we need you to do training on task analyses. But you're never going to see any of these people again. Like you just got hired to just do this one training. In those cases, you may only do the in vivo training follow up one time, and then somebody else has to do it.
Yeah, right. But like as a training package, that should be part of it.
You would continue on. Yeah.
So one nice thing I love about this article and the next article is another spoiler, is that once they lay out like the different steps and what they think you should do, they follow it with some data, which is really nice, because a lot of the times in our supervision articles, it's really theoretical, right? So it's like, here's a review of all the things that you should do and do it.
Here's some nice ideas.
Yeah, here's some great ideas. Here's some future directions for you, but just this is based on us, and what we know. But I love that they followed it up with some case demonstrations. So in this specific article, they were looking to teach most to least prompting procedure and sign language. So the 2 skills that the supervisor thought were going to be really important in the classroom. And they set it up just like a research article. So they talk about the participants. They give us all information about the participants, just so you know. There was 7 teachers and 1 teacher's assistant. So there was 8 participants learning how to do most to least prompting. However, there are only 7 participants learning how to do sign language. 1 of them was out on medical leave. So we know this, right? That's good. That's what we would know in a research article. Sure. One thing I love about this, and so I think that you should really read it to capture the essence of this case demonstration, is that they objectively wrote out exactly what they were looking for. Like there was no gray area. Like, this is super technological. They were like, okay, so for the most to least prompting, we need to look at the correct order. This is defined as blah.
Yeah.
Reinforcement, this is defined as what it was.
BAP is great for that, generally.
Yeah.
Behavior analysis and practice does a great job of laying out things in that level of detail so that someone could come in who's maybe less familiar with the research and pick it up. It has so many technological details.
Yes.
So I love that.
It's so great. And then they broke out the correct prompting into, initially you're going to be giving a full prompt and then less assistance over time. And they actually objectively defined that as well, which I was like, wow, it's really thoughtful there. And so here what they did, and though for the signs, they had 35 signs. They were based. Lot. I know, that's what I thought.
When I read it, I was like, do I know 35
I don't think I do.
I don't know if I do.
They were talking about items, actions, descriptors, and private events.
I think I do.
Yeah, and they looked at both the movement, the shape of the hands, and the location of the hands in relation to the fingers, I think. And so they wrote all of that out very, very technologically. They took baseline across all of the participants and for all of the behaviors. The one thing here, though, that struck me is that they had multiple training sessions.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about my life and all of the years I've been a behavior analyst, and there is rarely a time in like a new staff training or like a new hire training that I have multiple opportunities to be trained on a skill. Mm-hmm. Right? So you might have 3 hours of a task analysis training. Great, you've practiced it. See you. Next day, you're not going to be having a rehash of that task analysis training, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm going to give you another spoiler. I'm just full of them tonight. They saw that post-training, everyone was engaging in high rates of responding across both of the skills following behavior skills training or following the 6-step sequence, but they had multiple days or multiple training sessions in order to gain mastery. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit more in dissemination station, but that might be hard or a limitation for human service agencies that are possibly hiring like 100 to 200 people and need everybody to be fairly competent by the end of their like week-long or 2-week-long training. Right? Like there's some ways that we can talk about it. Yeah. But that first I was like, wait a minute. Multiple sessions. And I know you need to do that to establish, well,
the number of signs required. There was one, I think they got 7 signs done or 8 signs. I mean, so they were moving through the signs they were training, but it took some time to learn each one.
Right. But there's a rare time that you get that. I'm just thinking like through my head when you have new staff, you don't have like multiple sign language days. Trainings. No. Yeah, right? This is sign language part 1.
No.
Part 2. Yeah. Right? It's very rare. And then, so they conclude showing that behavioral skills training or the 6-step sequence was effective. Then they really talk about how we need to be doing 2 things. We need to make sure that we're ensuring the effectiveness of our staff training program by repeatedly taking data, monitoring our staff. They suggest future direction doing training the trainer, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Yep. And then they say that we should think about the efficiency of the training. Because didactic training is so short, supervisors or agencies may go to didactic training because it's easier and it's less time intensive. So we'd want to demonstrate that the 6-step sequence is more effective and more efficient because staff actually learn and retain the skills that they were taught in training, whereas you don't have to spend tons of time on the job training the skills that you didn't actually learn in the didactic training.
I've always found it very hard to make a case as to why one must spend more time with training, because if you're in a setting, say, that prides itself on its behavior analytic work, it's a little easier because if you're you're just in charge of training and not supervision, very quickly someone will observe your new staff and say, you're not doing this right at all. And if all you provided was the one, quick video session, you'll say, I think we need to double down and spend more time on this. However, in a lot of settings, many of the supervisors do not understand certain behavior analytic technologies, meaning they'll observe people working with students. And as long as the student seems happy, or they seem to be working, they might not know this is actually only 50% of what they were trained to do. Right. And A lot of parents don't know that. So it's incumbent upon, I think, the poor behavior analyst who's either overseeing this program or is responsible for the training or the supervision to make known that this is not what the protocol is. This is not what the procedure is. And that can sometimes take a lot of time just to prove, no, I need this time because I showed everyone how to do it once. Nobody did it better than about 40, 50, maybe 60% correct.
Does that matter, right?
This might matter depending on the skill. A lot of skills, we talked like a discontinuous data system. So an episode from a couple weeks ago.
61.
The idea of if someone's doing their prompts incorrectly for discrete trial training, you could really add on weeks and weeks and weeks of extra training that doesn't need to be there because somebody doesn't understand the prompt hierarchy or they don't understand criteria to move up or down in a prompt step. So it can be hard to make a case that I need these hours to train staff. The staff need the hours. Everyone benefits from these hours because it's really hard to compete with. Could you do all of your training in 3 hours? I guess if I showed a video saying, hi, let me show you how to do this. Now let me show you how to do this. Oh yeah, you could teach everything that one might need to know to work in a behavior analysis program, the average behavior analysis program, probably like 2 hours, 3 hours, just really quick shots. Would they be good at it? No.
Really?
Yeah, just like a little quick shot. Here's me reinforcing.
Yeah.
Here's another example of me reinforcing.
Yeah, I mean, like not having them do anything. If you're just talking about everything you're going to do.
Watch the video.
Right?
Boom, 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 boom. Going through. Maybe there's captions,
Right. So the authors do recommend, if possible, you could use a video to make sure that things are being efficient, but they caution using only videos because then it moves back to that verbal model of training and not necessarily the performance and competency-based training. They said that maybe if you're tight on time, you could schedule 1 hour training sessions instead of day-long training sessions, so you could, space that out. But that still may be challenging, right, to get people off shift once they're on shift.
It took years, but I was able to, for a lot of my trainings that I knew I had to do regularly, it was hours and hours, but you get the training done, and then you got a little 20-minute video that can be watched so that then when you're meeting with staff, all you're doing is saying, okay, I'm going to show you one more time, and now we're into feedback. It cuts a lot of time. So if you're a trainer who is responsible for training multiple people, then that can save a lot of time. But as every article that's ever talked about using a video or video model, there's a huge time commitment in creating these videos, which is very true.
Yeah, it's so true. And then finally, they just said that it will be important for us to promote staff acceptance of this training, right? So they'll actually have to be doing something and not just sitting in a room being passive. And so they said that right now, current research has just looked at surveys, but surveys don't necessarily correlate with actually what people think.
Do what?
I love that. I know. So like
Says who?
Our verbal report doesn't actually correlate with what we actually do in our thinking. So they say that future research there is warranted.
Yeah, everyone gets a nearly or mostly good on their Likert scale.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could have one crank who's like, I don't want to learn nothing
This is
new.
the worst.
I hate this training.
Yeah. So I think this article, I really love it for a variety of reasons, but I think that the case demonstration, even though we didn't talk about it a ton, is something that if you are trying to improve the nature of your training, the nature of how you're interacting with staff and how you're setting up, your day-long trainings or whatever, that case demonstration could really help you focus and format your different training modules to make it be more behavior analytic.
Let's move into a secret code word. That's right, folks at home. If you are listening to ABA Inside Track, one of the awesome things about us is that we're ACE approved, meaning by listening to the show, you can earn CE credits.
Yes.
Supervision CE
Occasionally
credit.
people ask, what type of credits and how many?
Type 2,
It's
1.
Exactly.
Sometimes we think about doing more, but we have so many jokes and japes. We want to make sure that we're not shortchanging you by saying you get more when we just joked around for 20 minutes about Mickey Mouse.
We guarantee 50 minutes of actual content.
We get guaranteed 50 minutes, 2-hour episode, 50 minutes of content. Then the rest is garbage, just garbage. But that 50 minutes, pure gold. And you will need to go to the website, and you can do that through the show notes, or go to abainsidetrack.com/get-CEUs. And you'll need 2 secret code words to make sure that you listen to the episode. And the first of those code words is Pharaoh. Pharaoh. Pharaoh.
Good job.
Like the rulers of yore in ancient Egypt.
I did not know how you spelled that, so I feel smarter.
It's a little tricky. We'll take all varieties of spelling on that
If you misspell
one.
Pharaoh, you will get credit. It is okay.
Pharaoh.
Before we get into an extension of behavioral skills training, why don't we take a little supervision break? We'll be right back.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu. See you there!
And we are back for the second part of our final supervision episode, all about behavioral skills training. In the first part, we talked about what BST is, and certainly if you've never read the Supervisor's Guidebook, which we recommend you do if you are regularly supervising folks, you probably heard all about behavioral skills training. If you're new to supervision or you haven't heard of behavioral skills training, that original article really is a great snapshot of what to do with BST. Now, those of you who have used BST probably are saying, that's all great. I love BST. What the problem I have is that I can only train like 1 or 2 people at a time. It's a disaster. How could I train more people than that? And to you, I say, perhaps a pyramidal approach would be the best for you. You will hold your training in a pyramid of some kind. I don't know, Dinah, you're the master of this article and disseminating its information. Please explain to me how this works. People pay you to train them, and then you train them to pay other people, and then eventually all the money comes back to you.
And that's what I thought too initially, that it was going to be like Amway.
It's a pyramidal scheme.
Or is Mary Kay a pyramid scheme?
No, I don't think so. Maybe it is.
I don't know. Maybe it's not. You can get that pink Cadillac though.
Well, I think when we think of pyramid, we think of the idea of something spreading out from one person. However, it is very much a scam. It's like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
It's the idea of I need the people below me to keep making money.
Well, Ponzi scheme is even more specific than that.
Yes.
But a pyramid scheme requires you to take in underlings with the promise that they're going to get paid more, but really it's the people at the top who receive the extra money from bringing in additional employees underneath them.
Yes.
Right.
But what we're talking about is not a pyramid scheme. So don't be confused. BST is not a pyramid scheme. What this article reviews, which is Parsons, Rollyson, and Reid 2013 in BAP, is using a pyramidal approach basically to train other trainers who are then going to go on and train staff using behavioral skills training.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this article, which is very valuable, I should say, in terms of how can I maximize the knowledge to everyone involved, I would say I wish they had used different nouns for the variety of trainers and trainees and participants in this article, because I had a hard time following what stage of the pyramid the authors were in at any time.
It does get a little bit hairy when you're trying to get through it, because they trained people to train other people. So many people were at the same time both the trainer and the trainee, and that got a little bit tricky.
They tried to use participant rather than trainer trainee. So if you were at the bottom of the pyramid, I believe you were a participant was the term they usually used. But sometimes they use trainee again. I think you had a good sentence, Diana, that I think summed up nicely sort of what we're talking about. And we will try to avoid falling into this pitfall, but please bear with us.
Yeah. I think one way that they tried to do this was in the tables. They were like, Carol did training. Then Carol trained Carl.
Yeah, that was helpful.
Right?
Yes. For the sentence you're referring to, Robin, this is just quoted right from the article. It says, first, the staff member whom the participant would train was asked to perform the skill to be trained to assess the staff member's pre-training performance of the target skill.
That is true, but it's
exactly.
Yeah, it is so true. Like there's no
They said it right.
Yeah.
It's just complicated.
It's just complicated.
So let me back up and take it from the top. I don't need to review for you guys what exactly BST is because Jackie already did a lovely job of that. This article basically dove right in as well, and they did highlight that there are two key features of behavioral skills training, which are performance on the part of the trainee and that it's a competency-based training, right? So again, vocal and written instructions as the only method of training, so didactic training has been proven again and again to be less than stellar. They gave us a nice citation for that, which was Pescher and Bailey, 2006, if anyone's looking for a reason to promote using BST and needs a citation to show that just vocal and written instructions aren't working as well. Behavioral skills training is great because you're not just telling people what to do, you're then giving them the opportunity to do it and then providing feedback on doing it and following up as needed until you see success. So it makes sense that this is a method that would work because there's a lot of follow through and a lot of hands-on that's a part of it. But the downside to that is that can take a tremendous amount of time, energy, and resources on the part of the people who know what they're doing, which are the people at the top of the food chain and the agency that you're working in, right? So the proposal here was how can we find a way to train so many new staff? It's not uncommon in behavioral agencies that you may have a lot of new behavior technicians or support staff coming on. And this is the time of year when that's happening, right? So our listeners are probably like, amen to that. That's all I've been doing for the past month is trying to train new people. And that's a really big concern. So the establishing high quality behavioral technicians who know what they're doing is of the utmost importance, right? But as the BCBA, you can get stretched really thin in trying to do that.
Right.
So what this article is trying to put forward is how can we find another way to get the training to everyone that they need? And their proposal is a pyramidal training approach, wherein the BCBA trains some mid-level folks who they call supervisors, but could be called any number of terms at your own agency. They may be, senior level staff. They may be folks who are about to get their BCBA and sort of training for that role. Train them how to train others. That is what we're talking about here, right? And they say if the best way to train someone is to use behavioral skills training, then the way that we should train our mid-level staff to train others is to use behavioral skills training to teach how to train. Yeah. That's where we get a little complicated in our discussion because we're using BST to teach someone else how to do BST with someone else.
It's like that picture where you're holding a picture of yourself holding a picture.
It's a little bit of an Escher
thing
happening here. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's, in real life, it would make total sense. It's just because it's all written down on paper and they keep using the same words over and over that it's getting a little complicated.
Right.
So this should save the BCBA time, right? It's still going to take the same amount of time to train all these new people. It's just that it's now going to hopefully be spread out across multiple other supervisors in addition to just the BCBA, who also needs to be ensuring that the clinical caseload is up and running and the students or the clients are getting the attention that they need to. So it's hopefully going to kind of share the wealth as far as the training is concerned, but it's not a shortcut in the sense of now we can all spend less time doing the training. It's just spread out.
No, but if done well or done within the appropriate sort of flow of an organization, you might have the person who is more on shift or working more often with the individuals engaging in these skills, providing more time with the training so that they are able to, they're already doing their job. Whereas for BCBA, it might be a matter of, okay, I'm supposed to be here to do job X, but I have to pull myself away from that in order to do my training and then get back to job X. And that can be challenging at certain times of year.
So the purpose of the study was to show the effectiveness of behavior skills training to train someone else how to implement behavior skills training. They did this by using 10 participants who all worked in a setting for adults with developmental disabilities. These 10 participants were sort of the mid-level folks, right? Who were then going to be training other staff. So they were 7 teachers, 2 teachers' aides, and 1 behavior technician who was about to become a behavior analyst. So they were like anticipating his promotion.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's probably really good news for him.
Right.
They're like, hey, do you want to be in this study?
Was that Rick?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. It was one of the gentlemen.
Oh, because Rick is the only one that didn't receive on the job.
Yes, he was away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it anywhere, and I was like, Rick, what happened to you,
I know,
Rick?
I wondered that too.
Yeah.
Like, did you leave? Did you go take a job somewhere else, Rick?
What happened, Rick?
They were doing so much for your training and your promotion, Rick.
And then you're out.
I don't know. They do say it was they had 3 men of the 10, and one of them was the BT. So I thought maybe it was Rick, but we don't know for sure.
Nor do we care. Let's continue.
They ranged in age from 31 to 57, and they had between 2 and 31 years of experience. The 31-year-old probably did not have the 31 years of experience. That was probably the 57-year-old, but we don't know.
But we don't know.
So the target behavior that we were looking at was the implementation of BST while training a staff person. And during all of the modeling, that staff person was a Confederate. And there was also a role-played consumer. Okay?
I love that they use different target skills across each participant.
They did.
I love that because that's what you would really do in real life.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be like, no, everyone's going to learn this one skill, right? You're going to pick skills that are applicable to the clients that you're going to serve.
Yeah, I liked that too.
Yeah.
It seemed really applicable
And thoughtful.
to what they were, thoughtful and what they were going to do. So they laid out the steps of behavior skills training. They were precisely what you already discussed, Jackie, because these are the same authors.
They were serious about their 6 steps.
Yep. In this one, there was actually 8 steps. So a couple of them were broken down a little bit more. They noted again that they added the rationale. And then they also had a step for recording the performance of the person being trained. So that was necessary for this purpose. And then the experimental design here is a multiple probe design across the 3 groups of participants. Baseline involved role plays with the person being trained, a Confederate staff member who was the trainee in that scenario, and then a experimenter who served as the consumer, which is the name for a client who is an adult with developmental disabilities. So there were 3 people present there. One of them was the participant in the study, and then 2 of them were serving as the role-playing the role of the person who was being trained, and then the person that they were assisting in the setting. They looked at 3 different skill sets. The first one was providing descriptive, behavior-specific praise to the consumer who was operating a switch press to make a radio play. The second skill was teaching the consumer to press the switch using least to most prompting. So that was the piece there that needed potential feedback. And then the third skill was providing a 2-item choice opportunity to the consumer. And they laid out really specifically, just like we already talked about too, that the staff member had specific scripts that they needed to follow during these role plays, so that there were opportunities in which they did things correctly and incorrectly, and generally within each opportunity they had one piece of the skill that they didn't complete appropriately, so that way the participant in the study had the opportunity to provide feedback.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that they, again, planned out their scripts, rehearsed them, and made sure that they were fluid before they gave it to their...
Totally.
Yeah.
So in baseline, they were presented with these scenarios. Our participant was supposed to be doing the training, right? Their staff member made mistakes, and we looked to see how did our participant respond to those mistakes, but no feedback was given. Then next, we moved into training. That was done in a group format. So there were 3 groups. There were 3 to 4 participants per group, And it was basically 2 hours of training in which they learned how to do BST. They learned how to teach someone a skill using BST. The first skill was doing 4-step embedded teaching procedure. So that was the first hour of training. And then the second skill was how to do a forced choice preference assessment. So that was the second hour of training. That was presented using the 8 steps of behavior skills training. So they received feedback and practice completing those skills until they reached the mastery criterion. And then from there, they moved back to the post-training / feedback session, which is basically the same as baseline, except now feedback was given on how they interacted with the staff member that they were training. Yeah, so did they implement behavior skills training correctly with the staff member? Did they provide feedback for them when they made errors in their skills that they were learning how to do? And then after the post-training occurred, then they did a follow-up probe, which was on-the-job assessment. So this was the piece you really wanted to see, right? Like, how did they do when they were in the real scenario? They needed to actually be training another staff member, and that staff member was then in turn teaching the consumer a particular skill, right? So this was like actually what you would be looking for. They did this with 9 participants. One of them was unavailable, Rick. And on the job assessment, they were observed using BST to train the staff member, and they chose for this part really relevant skills to the job. So again, it was the sign language. They must be using a lot of that in their clinic.
Absolutely.
Opportunities for teaching prompting, and then very specifically making jewelry. So they needed to teach the staff member how to make the jewelry so that the staff member could then teach the consumer how to make jewelry.
Except it's spelled wrong.
It is spelled wrong.
Making
Yes, they left off the Y. You are right. You know what else they did in this study? They multiplied by 100%.
No.
Guys, if you multiply by 100%, 100% is the same as 1. So if you're multiplying by 1, you have not changed your number at all. Your number remains a decimal.
And this was a while ago.
It was 2013.
Yeah, that's a while ago.
So just so everyone knows, if you want to make something, change something from a decimal to a percent, then you need to multiply only by 100.
Not the percent.
Not 100%. Okay. But other than that, looks great.
Yeah.
And then for results, we had 2 things that we were looking at in the results. And I feel like this really came into focus for me only when I looked at the tables for the results, right? So we looked at the participant, so our 10 participants in our study, how well did they do in their percentages on behavioral skills training? So what percentage of the 8 steps of behavioral skills training did they complete independently following their own training? But also, and I like this a lot, we also looked at their trainees' percentage on how well did they execute the skills that our participants trained the trainees on. Which is super important.
I agree.
Right?
Yep.
So it's not just how well did you do behavioral skills training, but also how well did the people that you were training with behavioral skills training then therefore do.
And they rocked it.
And they all rocked it.
They really did.
Yeah. Everyone was, low to start with and high to end with, between 85 and 100% at the end of the whole thing.
What's really interesting is for the participants, everyone received 100 except for Miriam. But Miriam got an 88%, but Marsha also got an 88% in her staff training, so I'm wondering if she messed up training Miriam, and that's why Miriam only got an 88%. You never know.
Which is why, in your other study, they said you need to train to 100%.
Right. Yeah.
It makes sense now.
Yeah, very interesting.
So I really loved that. I love that they really brought it around full circle for us, because if you just say, look, we taught these people to use behavioral skills training, you haven't completed the picture, because we don't know, was that training effective? But they thought of it, and it was.
Yay!
Yeah, and that's pretty much the summary there. So what we don't know, we only had 10 participants here, right? And they were still relatively small groups in the way that it was organized, that they were only groups of 3 to 4 people that they were training how to do behavioral skills training. And maybe that's the appropriate size of the group. But what we didn't get to see is this really expand out into a larger pyramid, which it might need to be depending on the size of your agency.
Yeah.
or have more information about, how long did it take to do this training? Once your mid-level folks were trained and then you sent them out to train everyone else, like what did that timeline really look like? How many people were they able to train at a time? And, what did those overall results look like on the job?
In real life, yeah.
So I feel like that might be the next step that I would want to see. But this was a cool way to think about training, and training is often this, really big piece of what we do in our jobs, and it can feel insurmountable at the beginning of the year when you start to think, how am I going to get all these new people trained? This could be an uplifting article, I think, for everyone here at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I would really love to do, and I haven't seen any research surrounding it, is how big can a group be in order for behavioral skills training to be effective with one trainer, right? So in all of these articles, there's like 2 to 4 people, maybe 2 to 3 people, but could you actually run this approach with 10 in a group?
Right.
Like, how long would that take? Would it be less? Would it be more? I think that is an area of research that I think we need to delve into a little bit more. Because that would be important for larger agencies where they have 100 staff starting at the same time. So then could we break them into 10 groups instead of 20 groups?
Right.
That might save more on more resources because we know that BST is really time intensive.
Or could you create some type of rolling system where you had different groups working on the role play piece at different times? So it's like a round robin style, right? Like you guys watch the video for this skill, and you guys, I'm going to role play this skill with you, and I'm just going to keep moving around the room so that I'm able to role play with several groups at once, but the next group's already moved on to the next skill.
That's clever.
Right?
Yeah.
To try to minimize the number of actual people that you need to do this training.
I love that idea. That's a good dissemination station.
Yeah, we may have rolled in.
I think
on
we're
accident.
Why not? I think that's a good idea. Let's just move in and get some kind of final thoughts on our dissemination station. This is part of the show where we kind of sum up what we have been talking about and think about sort of future means of using this information for practice, which is a lot easier to do because these are behavior analysis in practice articles. So some of that work has already been done for us. And then maybe we'll take it in and sort of sum up what we've been talking about this whole month in terms of our supervision.
Yeah, so I think it'll be really important for future directions to kind of look at the maximum number of people in a group and how do you create these groups to maximize in training and minimize time. How we know that we need to use behavioral skills training, and now we've seen that we can use behavioral skills training with a small group. We can also train the trainer module, and that's been effective. Our model and not module. And I think my biggest takeaway is that we should also be mindful is in our training programming as we are in our students programming.
Great point. Yeah. The types of opportunities that we talked about in this pyramidal model too, if you are supervising upcoming BCBAs, these could be really great opportunities for them to get practice providing observation and feedback to staff. So if you're in this position where you're like, how am I going to train everybody? Right? And you have folks who you're supervising, this could be the perfect opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, give them the opportunity to practice giving feedback and help you out in getting people trained.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think while supervision of others is not on the task list, it's an additional...
It will be.
It will be.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it is not. So a lot of people are just saying, well, I don't have to do that. You're going to get into this job. You will immediately have to tell people what to do and show people how to do it. So if you don't actually know about behavioral skills training before you're expected to be a BCBA supervisor, you're really going to have a hard time with your job those first few years. Because you write a great behavior plan. If you don't know how to train anyone to use it, you might as well have not bothered to write it.
Yeah.
It was heavy, man.
It was.
That's true.
Then the final thing I think is that we'd want to think about how we can use the accumulation of all of the articles to modify what we're doing with our new staff. So if you're not using behavioral skills training, how can you, if you're not, summarizing your behavior plans, how can you, that it's not going to be super intensive for you, right? Because we know no one has time. So I think it's all about what can you do to make your life easier using behavioral skills training? And then take one, not all of it. Maybe you don't revamp your entire system, but you take one part at a time, and then slowly start changing your systems until, everything is a little more streamlined with the behavioral skills training model. But you won't be able to just completely revamp, right? Unless you have unlimited time, because it's going to be a lot of time. So maybe you start on, that role play and feedback is important. So maybe you start there, right? So maybe you provide the rationale during role play and feedback, so it's not as formal as behavioral skills training. It may be a little messy. That's okay. But you slowly start incorporating each of those components into your training schedules.
Yeah, and I think across all 3 of this series that we've just done, that's kind of the message of all of them is supervision is really important. And the more that we can prepare on the front end and take this as a really serious responsibility and start developing the systems that we need, the better this is going to be, not just for us as a supervisor, but for our individual supervisees and therefore as a field as a whole, right? So our first episode was about making sure that we're adhering to the new systems and also technological advances that could assist us in providing the best supervision possible. The second episode was about barriers to supervision and, keeping the mindset that we're attempting to mold young behavior analysts into the best possible behavior analysts that they can be.
Right.
And then here we are now talking about how can we provide the proper training for them to learn skills as well as modeling that for them to use in the future. Yeah. So there is a lot of responsibility here, but there are ways I think that we can, moving forward, build the systems that we need to...
Slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
To help make this experience the best that it can be for all parties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Supervision is not an afterthought. It is something that must be
forethought.
carefully planned.
But seriously, it is, yeah.
All right. Well, before we break for the end of our lovely Supervision September, I want to make sure our listeners get that second secret code word. And it is OPAL. O-P-A-L. It's a fancy gem. What color is this gemstone?
An opal is generally white with a rainbow sparkles running through it. Although I have one from when I worked at the rock shop that's a fire opal. And it's like a deep brown with rainbow colors running through it. And it's really pretty. And the opal is the birthstone of October. But it's not often used because they break really easily. So you don't see it in jewelry that much. It can break just by tapping it against the table. So instead you might see tourmaline.
Opal. Whew. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of Supervision September. We did it, guys. We did it. Yay.
We did it. Yay. Thanks for coming, guys.
Man. The next time we think, hey, let's do 3 of these in a row or 5 or 4 of these, let's not do that because it is a lot of work. Maybe someday in the future, but not today. We're done. I can't believe we're finally done. Well, everyone, thanks so very much for listening to ABA Inside Track. We come out every week. Every other week, we're a preview episode, except for September. Yikes. You can find us all over the place online. You can find us online as abainsidetrack.com. You can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Jackie?
Yes, we now have a new Instagram account. Our handle is ABA Inside Track.
Okay, easy to find. And we hope you enjoyed this. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast. Please make sure to subscribe to the show if you liked it. Leave us a review. If you'd rather give feedback in another way, well, you can always do that at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. I think I've just been Instagrammed. How nice. Oh, man. It has been a month, and we've learned so very much about supervision. But now it's time for us to go into the night and go supervise somewhere else. We had a great time. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Diana.
Thanks, Robert.
I looked at the wrong people as I said your names. We'll be back next week with another with a preview episode. Yikes, we're talking about something different. Until then, keep responding. Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
So